All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started just to be respectful of your guys' time. But my first degree is in bionutrition. So I went to school pre-med thinking that actually I was on a recruiting trip at Auburn. And one of the only pre-med advisors that was happened to be in when I was down there was she was a nutrition major. And she sat there and told me about how doctors don't know anything about nutrition because it's not covered in med school. And it's still not today. About doctors only get a total of about 7 hours of nutrition in all their training. So when you ask them questions, a lot of times it's very like, oh yeah, exercise, don't eat, you know what I mean? It's like high level stuff. And so I did my bachelor's. And then once I got out, dietitians were not getting jobs because they were no longer being reimbursed the way they were prior. They were kind of being included under what we call a bed fee in the hospital. And so instead of going and finishing my dietetics, I went back to nursing. So I kind of feel like all these years later, it's kind of like pulled into one. So it's fun. And then probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I went and got my health and life coaching certification so that I could teach and kind of teach like different techniques and that kind of stuff. So I wanted to do the food guide, the new nutritional guidelines, because they just came out a couple weeks ago. And they're completely like, for people that follow this, they're like, some of the changes are pretty amazing. The nutritional guidelines have been coming out from the government since before 1900. It started off originally as just kind of advising farmers. And then over the years, it kind of progressed into telling people what they should eat. Unfortunately, for about the last 45 years, though, what happens is all this research comes into the FDA on food, and they make these guidelines, and then they literally distribute the guidelines to all these associations. Okay, so it was like the American Cattle Association, the American Dairy Association, all these associations have lobbyists that are all involved. And then the things would get a little change. So for the last probably 10 or 15 years, people were like, well, we really should be following the Canadian, because the Canadian guidelines didn't allow this kind of influence from industry. But so this is the first time in a really a long time that industry did not have as much say into the guidelines. And I mean, we can tell that the guidelines haven't been helping, because if you go around to any of these hospitals, they keep growing, right? About 3 years ago, the life expectancy in the United States actually started reversing. So it's not like we can say our population's bigger and we're getting older. Like, people are sicker, and that's the bottom line. And what's really sad is, like, when I went to school at UC for my nurse practitioner, Children's is right there, right? In the 4 years that I was down there, I think they put in, I forget how many new buildings at Children's. So we're not only seeing the illness in adults, we're seeing it now in kids, to the point that like we're seeing increased cancers and all sorts of stuff into that 1 in 3 kids now are pre-diabetic. They're now linking Alzheimer's to the same underlying disease. They're now calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. I don't know if any of you guys have heard that, because it's the same, the little microvascular damage is what's happening. So anyway, so I think it's really good that they put out these new guidelines, because not only does it influence us, it'll influence what's on the boxes of food, but it also it starts influencing the children's lunches and WIC, what they can buy and what they can't buy. The other thing that just to kind of give you some background and history, is when I saw this in Kentucky. So I grew up in Kentucky, went to UK for my undergrad. My roommate was a lobbyist after she graduated. She was a lobbyist for the Soybean Association. And why would that be, coming from Kentucky, that you would have a soybean association so rooted? Is because they were trying to get tobacco farmers to stop growing tobacco. So they were subsidizing these tobacco farmers for growing other things. And some of the things that they grew were the soybean, the corn, the wheat. Well, then we had a surplus of all this stuff, and guess where it goes? It goes into processed food. You see it like on a national industrial level, is that there was just a transition between whole foods and these, what we call high processed, like ultra processed foods. So I put the pyramid down there from 1992, because if you see at the bottom of it, It says 6 to 11 servings of pasta, rice, bread. I mean, that's all processed food. So they were telling us you need to get the staple, the most calories from your diet from these processed foods. And that is one of the reasons why we have seen so much elevation in um, um, diabetes and things like that. You guys all heard of Agent Orange, right? Okay, so it was big during Vietnam. The company that made that product was called Monsanto's. When the war was over, Monsanto's had to find another staple chemical that it could like live off of, right? I mean, it's just like any other company, it's looking for its next thing to make money off of it. So it made a product called glyphosate. Have you guys heard of glyphosate? Yeah. Okay, so glyphosate is the main ingredient in Roundup. Okay, so when you see these commercials on TV about Roundup with lawsuits and class action lawsuits, they're primarily talking about glyphosate. Glyphosate was sprayed on the ground up until it was about 2008. Wheat is a very finicky grain. You can only harvest it in the perfect amount of moisture. So they go out and they pluck a piece of grain, they put in this little machine, they dial it down, and it reads the moisture. If the moisture is too high, they can't harvest it. And so they're constantly watching rain and humidity and everything. Someone got the idea of glyphosate dries product out. So now what they do is they crop dust wheat, they fly it over these wheat fields. It takes up the extra moisture, and then the farmers can harvest the wheat and have more control over it outside of the humidity and weather. Right around that same time is where all of a sudden we start seeing all these people with celiac. And I mean, did any of you guys hear of gluten sensitivity when we were younger? There was, I mean, and now all of a sudden it's this celiac and gluten sensitivity, and I wonder how much of it's truly we're literally being poisoned by our wheat. So I would highly recommend. Glyphosate is banned in Europe. So whenever I buy pasta or anything, if you get the stuff that says made in Italy, it will not have glyphosate in it. The other thing with Monsanto's, with the company that makes glyphosate, it was bought out by Bayer several years ago. Okay, Bayer, aspirin, Bayer. Bayer just happens to make the chemotherapy for lymphoma, which is the number one cause cancer by glyphosate. Okay, so on the back here, this is kind of an overview of what they changed for the food guidelines. But number one, they specifically now are calling out ultra processed or highly processed food and actually saying not only do they cause chronic diseases, but they're dangerous for your health. And this is like, you can imagine these companies are not happy right now, okay? Because they're actually saying, that these products are not actually food. When your body eats food is not just for energy. It actually, all those minerals, all those vitamins, all those things that are in it are little chemical programming that send your body signals to tell it how to act and how to work. So the best way I can describe it maybe is like a signal coming in on your computer. When you get like a virus on your computer, it senses it's getting a kind of a program that it doesn't recognize how to read, and it starts acting out. And that's exactly what happens with our food. Go home and pick something out of your pantry that is like made to sit there for a while, right? Crackers or anything. You'll see that like they're chemicals. They're chemicals. And so when our body gets it, our body's like, okay, it's not a protein, it's not a carbohydrate, it's not a fat, it's a bunch of stuff that I don't know what to do with. And you literally, it reprograms you. The other thing that they did was they have now increased the recommendation for protein. Okay, so before the guidelines were set at what prevented protein deficiency, now they are more set at what is going to be optimal health. Okay, so I put it on there 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram, or about 0.7 to 1 gram per pound. When I do mine, so you guys can figure out your kilograms too. You take your weight divided by 2.2, and that's how many kilograms you are. When I do that, I'm supposed to be eating 80 grams of protein a day.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of protein. Yeah, it's a lot of protein. To give you some sense of like what it is, an egg has 6 grams of protein. A slice of provolone cheese is 5 grams. A piece of chicken. So what they do is like a serving size is a size of a deck of cards or the size of the palm of your hands. That's about 3 ounces. It's about between 20 to 25 grams of protein, depending on what you're eating, whether it's fish or beef or, whatever it is. But most of us are protein deficient. Yeah. Um, so the other thing is with kind of with our diet, if you think about how our American diet is, think about the things that are popular, and I try not to include them today. Bagels, muffins, pancakes, waffles, everything. Those are just straight sugars. And so it spikes your glucose, it spikes your insulin, and then you do a roller coaster the rest of the day, right? You're hungry, your brain is like, I didn't get fed, and you become, you kind of get in this roller coaster. So it's really important that Dr. Hyman is who I get a lot of my information from. He recommends actually 20 to 30 grams of protein for your first meal of the day, just to kind of stop that roller coaster from happening right away. There's a lot of connection between youth and staying young and protein. And a lot of it is because of muscle. Muscle is the biggest cause of aging, muscle loss. Protein and then lifting weights. So the other thing is the end of the low fat era. And this, I remember them talking about this when I was doing my bachelor's degree about, they even said back then, like they told us, don't eat non-fat or low-fat products, because in order for them they're taking the fat out, and something needs to be put in its place, either for the consistency or for the taste or for whatever. And what they've been doing for years is filling it up with sugars and artificial sweeteners and all sorts of things. Now it's all whole fat again. So where I have saturated fats is not your enemy, and then down there I have saturated fats is not a concern. There is, and if any of you guys want me to send it to you, I will send it to you. Mark Hyman has a really good, about an hour and 15-minute talk about saturated fats related to cholesterol. Okay. So we've had this whole thing, again, saying how bad cholesterol is and everything. Cholesterol naturally rises as we get older. We know that. It naturally goes up as we get older. The number 200 for cholesterol is completely made up. It was completely arbitrary. There's no study that ever said that this is a number that, in fact, in Europe, they don't even start looking at it until it's much higher than that. The biggest thing, and so we look at these LDLs and we think that these are so bad, but it's really not your LDLs as much as it is having low HDLs. So with cholesterol, with your LDLs and HDLs, you want your lows and your highs. That's just to remember. So you want your LDLs low and your HDLs high. We focus a lot about having our LDLs low when they actually peel back the research, but it's really when our good cholesterol HDLs are low and high triglycerides. So high triglycerides is indicative of how much extra sugar we have. So it's not so much the fat that's the problem. It really is the sugar. Now, with the caveat to that is if you're eating a diet very high in saturated fat, but you're also eating a diet high in starches and sugars, then that's when you're going to have the problem. But we don't see people like on ketogenic diets have like this astronomical cholesterol compared to like normal diets. So fats have kind of gotten a bad rap. The other thing is there's a direct correlation between older people. So when I say older, I think the study said 65 and older, the lower their LDLs were, the higher the rate of Alzheimer's. The cholesterol is neuroprotective. It protects us. The other thing is if you think about our cells, do you guys remember back to biology? Our cells have a bilayered phospholipid membrane. Lipid is fat. We need fats in our diets in order to maintain the cellular structure. So they've gotten a bad rap, but they're actually needed. Now, on the flip side, there is no essential carbohydrate. We've got essential amino acids for protein, and we've got essential fatty acids like our omega-3s and our omega-6s. There's no essential carbohydrates. So just kind of keep that in mind when we eat. It says that some conditions they're actually calling out that some conditions may benefit from a low carbohydrate diet. don't focus so much on the calories as much as the quality of foods. So what I would recommend with this is when you think about eating better, don't think about it being a diet. Think about what are small changes that I can make, because anyone can go on a diet and make changes, and then 3 months later they're like, oh, I can't do that. You know what I mean? We're looking for changes that can be sustainable. So I'll give you an example. I drink a lot of tea, and I used to put a teaspoon of sugar in my tea, and I was like, well, that's something I could gradually cut out. So I just start kind of cutting back until I wasn't using it. But one week I thought, okay, every time I get a cup of tea, I'm going to put the sugar that I would have put in my thing, I'm going to put it in a container. By the end of the week, I had a container, it was probably about that big and probably about that high, full of sugar. That was just one change that I made that was very impactful. So just like look at just small things. Maybe it's, instead of having, maybe in the morning, instead of having, more of a carbohydrate, maybe it's doing a yogurt or instead. But that stuff all it all builds on each other. So we hear about all these diets, right? I actually have a sheet of over 100 diets that are out there. And what it turns out is the only difference between all these diets, 100 diets, is where we're getting our primary source from. Some of them are high fats, high proteins. Other ones are, carb or whatever. The balance. So what proportion are we getting? Is it 20% of fat, 30% fat, that kind of stuff. And then the timing. So when you start getting into the intermittent fasting, and should you eat 2 meals, should you eat 3? But all those 100 diets, all it is a difference of the source, the balance of the timing. And when you think about it that way, you're like, oh, they're not actually that different. You know what I mean? So there's many diets. One person may do great on a ketogenic diet or something like that, and another person may feel lousy. So the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is when you eat something, about an hour later, think, how do I physically feel? If your stomach hurts, but sometimes it's food that you wouldn't suspect that's bothering you, especially if you have GI issues. We think of the big culprits, the soy, the dairy, the everything, but it could be something like a banana or, you know what I mean? So and then the other thing is just your energy. After you eat something, about an hour later, how do you feel? Food should be giving you energy. So if you're eating it and an hour later, you're like, I don't feel very good. Probably it was something you ate. So just kind of start thinking about that. Obviously, the other thing is that your diet changes as we get older. As we get older, we definitely need more protein. So that is one thing to kind of start pulling into your diet. The other thing is your relationship to food. So one thing that I teach with health coaching is it's the when, where, why, how type thing. So sometimes it's if you go and you're eating, you think, am I really hungry? And if the answer is no, say, why am I eating? You know what I mean? And you just sometimes it's boring. I'm bored. Sometimes it's stress. Sometimes I know for me, I think there's some kind of signal that when I open my door into my house, I'm like, I need chocolate. I don't know what the deal is. It's like I've got this association to the jar over there. But just kind of think about why you're doing it. And nourishment is so much more than food. And even in my health and life coaching, they talked about one of the reasons why people say grace and prayers before they eat is because we're obviously grateful for the food, but we are also blessing the food that then we are putting in our bodies and then we are consuming it. So there is a spiritual aspect of eating and just being grateful for it. Also that, it's more than just, that's why we have such communities that's let's go eat, let's have Thanksgiving, there's more to just eating than or more to food than just eating. Okay, so I put a little snippet down there about the ultra processed food. Some of this kind of stuff I talked about and this is from Mark Hyman. This is straight from his information here. Biologically disruptive. This is what I was talking about, the chemicals. Food is actually this food. I think they call it now food-like substance. It is made in labs. I mean, literally a Cheez-It. It's made in a lab. There's nothing but they are made to taste good. They're made to create cravings. They're made to become addictive. And that's the food industry has made them like that. Low cost, it tastes good. They usually don't fill us up. So then we keep eating more. But the biggest thing that it's doing is it's sending our brain and our body signals that it doesn't understand. I'm not going to get into this much, but I'll tell you kind of the other thing that it does is it irritates the lining of the gut. Okay, so our small intestine, starting in our small intestines, is only 1 cell thick. 1 cell thick. So here's our food. We got 1 cell, and here's our bloodstream. Okay, so this stuff is leaking over. So the way I describe it is if we were in a house and the only thing between us and the outside was a piece of like not plastic, not even the hard plastic, but just like the rolls of plastic you put up over your windows. If you saw some person lurking outside, what would be happening? You'd be like, oh my God, oh my God. Like you go on alert, right? Our body does the same thing. It sees this stuff and it's like, that stuff's not supposed to be there. And it goes on just it just goes on alert. It's not freaking out like someone's chasing us, but it's this low grade stress in our system, and it causes inflammation. Okay. This is why we are seeing so many autoimmune diseases. Okay. Our body's like, I'm not sure what that is. It kind of looks like something that maybe I should recognize, but I don't. And so it just kind of goes into a little heightened alert. And that is why, go ahead.
Is that the same as leaky gut?
Yeah, that is leaky gut.
That is leaky.
That is leaky gut because it causes that lining, that 1 cell lining, to be permeable. So there's certain things that should be passing through that, right? There's vitamins, minerals, all that kind of stuff that should be passing through, and it's supposed to be kind of our gatekeeper. But when it gets damaged and it gets there's actually channels that open and things start flowing from our inside to our bloodstream. Things get in our bloodstream that should not be there, and that is leaky gut. And that is like the leading cause of why we're seeing so many cancers, why we're seeing autoimmune diseases, why we're seeing these conditions that we're like, what is this? I mean, it's all inflammation. That's the one thing that we can do really is to help eat whole foods to protect that lining. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of on the vitamin circuit, depending, there's so many things out there. Obviously, you're not going to get enough vitamins in all the foods you eat. Just about D3 and some of those. What is your, like your view on that?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So with the soil, so if they've actually looked at apples from 50 years ago and apples now, and they do not have the same nutritional content to them for several reasons. One is because we're overgrowing. We're not rotating crops, we're not slash and burn, we're not doing all that. So the ground's deficient. We're replacing it with things that are usually in a form that our body doesn't get. It's usually not an organic form of vitamins or things like that. So it is estimated that like 30% of the population actually has deficiencies. Now, the thing is with deficiencies is like, say a B vitamin is required for 15 things in your body. Your body will notice that we're not getting as much coming in. So we need to prioritize these 15 things, right? And so it starts kind of ranking them like, does she need good hair? Nope, not important. Does her skin need to look good? Nope, not important. So we can tell a lot of stuff, what's going on inside by outside, because this is not important to what our body's trying to do. So supplements are very important. The thing is with supplements is they're not regulated by the FDA. So I could bottle something and call it, and there's not a whole lot of checks and balances. So I'm carrying Designs for Health now. There's like four or five medical grade supplements. The rest of them are not considered medical grade. So what that means is they may not be in the right form. They might not be as potent. They may not be as readily absorbed. So you want to look for ideally medical grade, but if not, you want to at least be looking for something that's certified by a third party, so that there is some proof of what's in the thing. So some of this stuff I've kind of already talked about. Prioritize protein at every meal. This is actually this guideline emphasis, that the first part that is pulled straight from the realfood.gov. So I did not make up that is like what is being recommended. Food quality is more important than calories. So not all calories are created equal. So obviously if I'm out drinking wine and I get 150 calories, that's a little different than getting 150 calories from a salad. food affects your body. So I've already talked about that, how it signals no carbohydrate is essential. The other thing with protein, so you actually burn calories while you're eating because it takes energy to break down the food, right? So protein has the highest thermogenic effects. That means you're burning more calories eating 1 gram of protein than eating a gram of fat or carbohydrate. Protein's essential in large amounts. And then I've already said about the omega-3 and omega-6s. Now, this is the other thing that is coming out now, which is kind of amazing, bless you, that they've announced too, is that they're actually recommending personalization based on DNA. But we can actually tell things like what kind of exercise are you going to respond best to based on your DNA? What kind of more high protein, more high fat diets are you going to respond to? So it's actually interesting that they're actually calling that out now, that not only should they not all, yeah, I will. That not only does not all diets, one size doesn't fit all, but that we should be using DNA to actually help us make a decision. Yeah. Kind of put a definition of food there. I've kind of already talked about that. This is the other thing that's huge, is they are actually dedicating $100 million to do studies in functional medicine and lifestyle medicine for our Medicare population to see how we can improve their health. So that'll be interesting to see what kind of results come out of things like that. And really our goal, and Mark Hyman talks about this all the time, you want your health span to equal your lifespan, which means you don't want to, if you are 90 years old, you want to live 90 years, not live 80 and spend 10 in a nursing home, right? I mean, I don't think any of us want to do that. So that's the goal, is to make your health span equal your lifespan.
And kind of reverse this, because we're all, I don't want to speak for everyone in the room, but I'm losing faith in doctors in general. I mean, for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And it's personal, of course, but just the fact that you said they don't even have this kind of education or training is really hard.
It
the
is.
healthcare system's gone to hell in the first place.
Yeah.
The last couple of years.
It's so, if you go back to look at it, pharmaceutical companies are the biggest. They're the biggest influencer of medical school. So, and I know when I did NP school at UC, I'd sit there in those lectures and you're like, okay, I see these symptoms. Okay, I do this test. All right, this diagnosis and this drug. And like me thinking I was being a good nurse practitioner by knowing that process. And it wasn't until I start looking at stuff that I'm like, hold on, this doesn't even make sense. Like, we're just giving a pill to treat a group of symptoms. We're not, a lot of times they don't even know what's wrong with you.
Exactly.
And then they're giving you a pill that just kind of like makes the symptom go away, but it's not actually fixing you.
Right.
But unfortunately, they fund, and I truly think that doctors go to medical school thinking that they're helping people. And I think probably most of them think they truly are when they're giving you a pill, because that's how they were trained. But until pharmaceutical companies aren't the leading driver of medical schools, I mean, I don't know.
Kind of scary.
The thing is, if you actually look back in history, I like history. So if you look back in history, do you know which family started the whole pharmaceutical industry? It was the Rockefellers. So a lot of drugs are petroleum based. It wasn't until the birth control pill came out that people realized, or a company realized, hey, people are willing to take a pill every day. Up until that point, people didn't take pills. It was to get something. It was for something, to get you over something, but it wasn't like, long term. And then once that happened, like you look at the number of drugs that came out, it's like skyrocketed. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the whole thing with functional medicine. Is functional medicine means getting to the root cause of disease. If you look at a lot of things, like for instance, early menses, PCOS, breast cancer, they're all the same cause. They're all the same reason. But the thing is like, you've got a pediatrician looking at one, you've got an endocrinologist looking at another, you've got an OBGYN, and no one's looking at the whole system. The other thing that I think is greatly missing, and I think this is, I have to say, I think it's intentional, is hormone replacement therapy is not covered in med school. Did you know that? It's not covered in med school, and it's not under any of the specialist training. OBGYNs don't get in their training. No. And neither do endocrinologists. That's why when you go to a doctor, they're like, "Oh yeah. That's how women are. Yeah, you get these hot flashes." Well, I mean, like, why is that? Why is it not covered? You know? So, in the study that did come out, that big study that kind of set our tone for hormone replacement therapy like 25 years ago, was kind of a flawed study. They looked at synthetic hormones. We're now looking at stuff now and realize it's not bad. I will say there's a caveat to that, and I've told a couple of you guys that, and this is why DNA testing is so important. If you are triple positive, so you've heard of triple positive breast cancer, those are 3 genes. It's not the BRCA or anything. It's 3 genes. One, it's how much estrogen you make. One, how well you clear the extra estrogen that you have. And number 3 is where you store it. If you've got all 3 of those, so you make too much estrogen, you're not clearing it, and then you store it more in your breast than your abdomen, those are the people that are at highest risk of breast cancer, and those are people that should not be taking hormone replacement therapy. So you definitely do want to know where you stand in some things before you start it, but it's not like, oh, it's bad for everyone. But that's kind of what we've been told, that it's bad for everyone. Just to let you know, the other side is kind of more extra. I put a thing in there just about sugar and your skin. Kind of this one just kind of talks about your sugar. And how it affects collagen. There is a process called glycation, and glycation is it's a combination of it's in this little picture here. Glycation is a process that we get when we use a protein, a sugar, and heat. Some of our cooking, caramelizing things and things like that is also a form of glycation, but it actually breaks down the collagen in our skin. So that's kind of sugar does really affect you in many ways. I put that one in there. I put the water in here because I don't think people realize how well, like this picture right here, this was a water challenge. And if you look at her face, she looks like she had a treatment, doesn't it? She looks like she had like some kind of, that was just doing like full hydration. But you're supposed to drink half your body weight in water a day. And you can get that in other forms as long as it's not got sugar and calories in it. So the other one, this is my functional medicine program. The only 2 I'm doing kind of right now, I'm initially doing on this one, is the skin and GI, because the other ones all are reliant on your DNA, and I'm not finished with that course yet. This one here. So this is kind of sitting down and looking at some of the things that we talked about and making changes. Most of the time when I have people that come in with skin conditions, whether it's eczema or psoriasis or rosacea, most of the time I'll say, do you have gut problems? And most of the time they kind of look at me like, yeah, like, why are you asking me this question? And because it's related. We get this inflammation in our gut and we get inflammation of our skin. So right now, just the skin and gut. So the other thing on here is Function Health. That's a group of labs. The other thing, kind of when you were talking about, like when we go to the doctors, is when you go in and they're looking at the CBC, the CMP, the liver function test, the cholesterol. Those are tests that look at organ level. We're looking at the liver, we're looking at the kidneys, we're looking at, things like that. By the time these labs down here start showing problems, you're already having organ problems. By the time your BUN and creatinine are elevated, you've got kidney problems, right? We want to look at things upstream so that we never get to these down here. So that Function Health, it looks at a lot of those labs that it looks at a lot of things that like CRP and looks at ANA. It looks at a bunch of stuff to look like, do you have maybe a low-grade thyroid issue that hasn't popped up yet? Or do you have like a low-grade autoimmune that's kind of not, like, you're not really seeing symptoms yet? Because by the time you have symptoms, like, that's, you know what I mean? We don't want symptoms. We want to catch it before then. So if you've got a deficiency in something, oh, with the DNA too, this is something kind of interesting. There is a genetic mutation called the MTHFR. MTHFR is a methylation issue. So what that is it's converting B vitamins from one form to another. Okay. So I have that gene. And the only reason why I know I have that gene is because I did the function health. I saw my homocysteine level was super high. So my homocysteine level is an inflammatory marker. And I was kind of like, what's going on with that one? Like, it's like really, really high. And so that is linked. When I see that, I know that it's usually a mutation of this particular gene. But what it is that I can't take folic acid and convert it to folate. I can't take some of these B vitamins that are found in like our bread products and convert it. And not only can I not convert it, so I could have a deficiency in one of these, because if I'm taking a multivitamin and I'm just like, I'm at Kroger's and I look and I grab a folic acid, not only can I not convert it to folate, but it's building up in my system and it's causing issues. About 30 to 40% of the population have that mutation. So it's important to know like what you have, because not only do you not want to waste your money on something, but you want to be, the whole reason why you're taking that stuff is to improve your health. So, but I mean, and that homocysteine, if I would have walked around with a homocysteine like that for for until I was 60, I might have been one of those people that were like, if she just stopped dead of a heart attack, I wouldn't have guessed it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I've been walking around with inflammation for probably a really long time. The other thing is I didn't know, but was I deficient in folate when I was pregnant? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. So it is important to kind of know some of that stuff.
Okay. Do I just go to a drugstore and say I want to lower my cortisol?
So yeah, so cortisol is it has a lot of influence over a lot of things. So the other thing is like sleep. So cortisol naturally rises in the morning and wakes us up, right? And then its opposite counteract as far as sleeping is melatonin. So those two kind of balance each other out. One goes up at night and the other one goes down, and vice versa. But what happens with, when I was talking about these chemicals getting into our system and causing this low grade stress, our body knows that something is going on. There's something in our system that's not supposed to be there. And it's on this low grade alert. So not a high grade, but low grade. And so that also increases cortisol level. So cortisol causes our metabolism. It causes us to hold on to more weight. And if I've been told, and I believe this, I've read this, is that even if you are consuming less calories than you are expending every day, if your cortisol is high, you will not lose weight. So every program that I have done for like health starts with the gut and then your nervous system before it even addresses kind of food. And that's kind of part of my program, is kind of going through some of that, is working on like, how do I lower stress? Some of us have stress that we may not even be aware of. That's external, right? And then there's the internal stress too. So
with your program, you would help look at that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can look at your cortisol levels and try to figure out kind of what is causing that to be high.
Is that a blood test, or is that going to be a DNA?
No, that's a blood test. Yeah, cortisol is one of those things that if it's, and it's going, it sends signals to hold on to belly fat and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. Any other questions? Any topics that? Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
With sugar.
I think the biggest thing with sugar, the reason why it's not good for us is because it gives that immediate spike. So if you mix it, if you're putting it with something where you have protein and fats, you're not going to get that spike. So part of it is whether you're eating it like alone, like in a cake, whether you're making it to be like in a great, a sauce or something like that. And you've also got protein and that kind of stuff with it. As far as a substitute, I mean, I would do cane sugar over. I'm not like aspartame. This was another thing when I was in school. I remember them saying, aspartame, we know aspartame causes cancer, but you would never get enough of it to cause cancer. But we knew it caused cancer in laboratory rats back when, I graduated from UK in 97. So it was back then. The problem is now that it's in everything, we probably are getting quantities that could be at that level. So I would stick with the natural. I mean, when you are using honey, honey is great for you. Like, especially in this area with all the allergies, if you get local honey, it helps with allergies because it's got the, all the things like that. And I would say, like, just trying not to eat it like in solo.
What's interesting is being on a no or low sugar diet. I don't know if I can be on sweet.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll be completely honest that I do have a sweet tooth. I like chocolate. But that's good. Yeah, the dark chocolate, if it's over 70% dark chocolate, it's this made me think about it. So with cancer, we know that sugar fuels cancer. Okay. The cancer loves sugar. And it blows my mind. I would sit in chemotherapy and watch these patients. What do they give people during chemotherapy? Juice, cookies, crackers. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, why are we doing this? Like, why? Why are we doing this? So I don't know. I don't know why we do that, but not good health care. But yeah, I would stick with more than natural.
That's what we use at home.
And you can, I know, what is it, Green Acres? You can get it there. And then there's another farm that's off Gibbons now. I can't remember what that's called, but they've got honey there that they, Turner, yeah, they have that there too.
So they always have,
Okay, that's down in Milford.
Milford.
Okay, yeah, so honey's better.
there and it's off the farm.
It's crazy. Honey, well, you probably know this. Honey, do you remember when we had patients with bed sores, we would use that nectar on them?
Yes.
I mean, like it prevents infection. It helps heal. Yeah. And we used to use it on patients in the ICU with bed sores.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Put it clean.
Mm-hmm. And that's better too, because if I did a lecture on gut health, when we take an antibiotic, it's not like it's just getting that antibiotic that's on, or that bacteria that's on our face. It, like, our gut biome is a little, I think of it as the Amazon rainforest. And when the more diversity you have in your gut with microbes, but when we take an antibiotic, it wipes out a bunch of them. And when you take something like a Levaquin or a Cipro, which is a broad spectrum antibiotic, it can take years to replenish the microbes that you. And so that's one of the things with, like, people that do get sick more and things like that. It's like, were they breast or bottle fed? Were they vaginal or C-section? Did they have a lot of ear infections and were on a lot of antibiotics? Those are the people that we see with more chronic diseases.
Tell me about up here.
Yeah. So I tried to get kind of stuff that was kind of universal. On this side, there's two things that I use that if someone did come in with gut problems, it's kind of a gut reset. And then over on that side, I've got two probiotics. One is kind of the one closest to the wall, I think, is more neutral probiotics. Everyone really should be on a probiotic. The thing with a probiotic is you want to rotate them too, because we want that diversity. You want to try different, you want to be on different companies or different supplements because they all carry different strands.
Good point.
Okay. So the one that's closer to you is got more bacteria. That's more for bladder and vaginal health too. And then I've got one in the refrigerator that if someone's at high risk for colon cancer, you should be on something that has butyrate. It has a butyrate in it. Let's see.
What's the fountain of youth?
So those are all, so,
I'll take that.
so Designs for Beauty is a subcategory of Designs for Health. And so those are formulated for, like, inflammation of the skin, or they have formulas for, like, PCOS, things like that, to help kind of balance them out. A lot of those will have some vitamins in them, vitamin E's and vitamin C's, and maybe some B vitamins, but they also have, some of them have tea tree, some of them have, they have different, things in them.
Okay.
Let's see, some of these over here, these are all for kind of like hormone balance. And a lot of them have like more of your homeopathic. I know we look at, like, some of these cultures, like Native American Indians, or we look at some of these cultures and think that they were so primitive, but I think in many ways they were much smarter than we were. Yeah, there's a fat soluble vitamin, so your A, D, and K. If you're going to do a D3, you really want to have like a K with it because it helps absorb it better. The primal the multivitamins, again, when you, at least when you get it with this company, it has all the pure forms, not the synthetic forms. Like, so this is going to have folate in it, not folic acid. Pretty much everyone should be, I shouldn't say everyone, a lot of people should be on omega 3s. Our diets tend to be, we look at that ratio of 3s to 6, and we tend to be higher in 6s and 3s. And we really need to be higher in 3s. So there's one. The one thing I will say, magnesium. Okay, so we all hear about magnesium, right? Magnesium great for you, but I'll teach you like a little like cheat sheet thing that I have on magnesium, how you remember it. Okay, so there's lots of forms of magnesium. The magnesium glycinate, I think of G as general. So if you just want a good general magnesium, that's the form you want, the glycinate. Okay. Glycinate.
G.
Okay. Yeah, G. So think G general. Okay. If someone has bowel problems, okay, that's going to be the citrate. So I think of constipation, crapping, citrate. Okay. So CCC. The magnesium malate is going to be more for muscle cramps and migraines. So I think of muscles, migraines, malonate, MMM. And then the threonate over there, magnesium is great for memory. The threonate is the variety for, I don't know how to remember that except
Thinking.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, there you go. I hadn't come up with that one yet. So magnesium. We thought about creatine. People are like bodybuilders, like I'm going to get my creatine. At 20 milligrams a day, creatine is very, very beneficial for memory. So I know, like, I had kind of gone off all my supplements over the summer and was just busy in that. And so I was like, I would get back to the back room and I'm like, what was I just going to do? And I'm like, there's something seriously wrong with me. And then I did, I'm taking my creatine, I'm doing the neuro, and I do feel much better. But I mean, I can tell a difference being on supplements versus not supplements.
Okay, would you go? Or should I?
Well, the best thing to do would be to get some blood work done to find out if you're deficient in something. I had one of my runners a couple years ago came to me, great runner, starting to pass out during races. And they were checking blood pressures and blood sugars and everything was fine. And so end up doing some blood work on him, deeper dive, and he had mitochondrial dysfunction, which mitochondria is the powerhouse of your cell, right? And so the reason why he was passing out is literally his cells were running out of steam. And one of the things are values, I think they say, what is it, under 30 is a deficiency? I think it's under 20 or 30, but really our numbers should be much higher than that. And probably most of us are very deficient in vitamin D. So like I had to put him on a high dose, like 10,000 milligrams for 2 weeks and then 5,000 milligrams just to get him up to where he should have been. And then it sounds like an astronomical amount, but had we not known that this is part of his problem was vitamin D, we wouldn't have known to give him that much vitamin D. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the best thing to do is to know your baseline so you know where you are. Yeah. So you're not guessing. So you can either rotate them per day. They recommend 3, rotating 3 at a time. So 3 brands, 3, whatever. You want to look at the back of them and get some diversity. But you can either do them like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like 1, 2, 3, or you can do one for a month and run out and do your next one for a month and then do your next one. But yeah, think about your gut as being like a little rainforest, and you want as many little species in there as you can get. Mm-hmm.
So is it optimal to switch them out every day of the week? I mean,
I would say it'd probably be better to do it daily versus a month, but you just don't want to get on one and just stay on it, because then you're great, you've got all those, but I mean there are more bacteria cells in your body than your own cells. to crow when you think about it, but I mean, that's true. So you want as many as you can. And like acromantia is one that they've looked at. We know people that have acromantia have better gut health, lower risk of colon cancer, but they respond better to immunotherapy drugs. There's a guy, William Lee. His last name is Li. His mom had stage 4 ovarian cancer, I believe. Wasn't responding to immunotherapy, so like something like Keytruda, if you hear those commercials, and that basically teaches your body to attack the cancer. Wasn't responding to it at all. He did like a fecal test on her, found out what she was deficient in, start giving her supplements, and one of them was acromantia, and she's been in remission for years. But yeah, that bacteria. What's crazy is, you've got this two-way vagal system, right, in your head and your brain. And so, like, if you're getting nervous, what do people say? They're like, "Oh my God, I'm going to get sick," right? That's that gut-brain axis. But your gut sends more signals this way than your brain sends this way. And so those little microbes are the ones sending signals up. In fact, your serotonin, you have more receptors, and your production of serotonin, 80% of it's in the gut. And so if you've got someone that is got a bad, like things are messed up, they're going to have probably a depression.
There's a wonderful documentary called Your First Brain.
Oh, do you know what it's on? Your First Brain. Your First Brain. Yeah.
This is our first brain, and that's never wrong, right?
No, I mean, it's true. If you listen to your gut, literally.
It's a great documentary.
But
Maya or look on Prime. I don't know.
It's called Your First Brain?
Your First Brain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great.
It's fascinating. And we don't think, like, if you go to the doctors and you tell the doctor, "Gosh, I'm just not feeling like myself. I don't have energy. Blah, blah, blah." You're going to walk out of there with 3 prescriptions, and they don't address, like, what are you eating? What's the stress in your life? It's, but don't think of it as being like overwhelming. Think about it. I had someone tell me this. It's small hinges swing big doors. So small changes, just make little changes. All right. Well, I hope you guys all learned something.
That was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I'm excited about the DNA.